Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Little Lit, It Was a Dark and Silly Night, the third and last of these great Little Lit anthologies of comics for children. Once again, they've collected all these great comic book artists and writers and all these great children's book illustrators and writers to make kids comics. This one's an interesting one because it has a theme. Every single story must start with the line, "It was a dark and silly night," and all the artists do this. Once again, edited by Art Spiegelman and Francois Mouly. Art Spiegelman provides this really fun cover. I like how it's almost a little spooky looking, the way these kids' faces are in this extreme shadow, but then we see these incredibly goony, zany, daffy, fun characters floating around. Art Spiegelman's really good at this. So many of these characters actually made me chuckle. I love this guy. This guy's on the cover of the comic book this kid's reading. Same character. But, yeah, this was fun to look at, you know. I spent a good minute or two looking at every one of these goofy little characters. Really nice cover. So the end papers here are by Martin Handford. We saw him last time here. He's the guy who created the Where's Waldo series, and even the end papers. It was a dark and silly night, and this was fun as hell to look at. I gotta say, I think I'm regressing or something because I almost want to buy Where's Waldo books now. It was really fun just looking through here. I just love the work put in. How much every little inch. There's like 8 characters all doing some interesting bit of business. I'm a total sucker for that stuff. I also like how this is like, it's almost scary because, you know, just look at the coloring here. It looks like it's night. It actually looks like it's dark. All these people are terrified of these monsters that have seemed to have arisen throughout the city. But they're very goofy monsters. They're very just daffy, silly monsters. But still, these people are genuinely scared. So I'm curious, I wonder if like little kids who saw this, I could imagine some of them just being like, you know, picking up that all these people are scared and being scared, you know? Yeah, I don't know how little kids think anymore, but it's interesting. It's an interesting blend of kind of being scary and being very silly. All these monsters are well designed. They're funny as hell. There's also an extra little bonus to this drawing. Martin Handford has hidden one character from each of the stories within this drawing. And before I even knew that was a thing, because there's lots of random weird characters in here. Some guys are dressed up as knights. Mostly they're just normal 21st century people. But I did notice this right here. I was like, hey, that looks like that Basil Wolverton character, that space guy. And I can't think of his name right now. And then when I flipped the page and found out, oh yeah, that's the point of this, or at least the little game. It was like, oh, because they reprint a story by him, a Basil Wolverton story about that character. Pretty fun stuff. There's a little cameo of Waldo here. We just see him from the stomach down. This gigantic Waldo looks like he's 25 feet tall. Nice stuff. We got the title page. Another well-designed contents page. There's that guy I was just talking about, the Basil Wolverton character. Man, there's some great stuff in these. This was no exception. This is a really great collection. So, of course, every story is basically called "It Was a Dark and Silly Night." So that's the title of every story in this issue, basically. So this first one is written by Lemony Snicket, who, especially at the time in 2003 when this book came out, he was incredibly popular with his series of unfortunate incident books. I think they were considered young adult, and I've never really read those. I've read little snippets of his writing here and there. He's a pretty funny writer, and I know he just wrote for kids, technically, but he's pretty hilarious and actually quite clever writer. And then it's drawn by Richard Sala, the dearly departed great cartoonist. He also colors this, I assume, really luscious colors in this comic. So this is a very interesting one. It says, in this case, silly stands for somewhat intelligent, largely laconic Yeti. A little girl named Lucretia has seen one outside her window. Heard it knock on the door. She says somewhat intelligent, which means slightly smart, which she applies to the Yeti because he can't open up the window latch. Largely laconic, which, because he's mostly silent, he doesn't really say anything. He just kind of has a hoarse whisper. And he's a Yeti. So Lucretia is somewhat startled by this. The Yeti turns around and walks away. Lucretia thinks it also looks a little lonely. She lives in this village up in the mountains where it's always winter because it's so cold. So it's basically snowing all the time and cold. In school, she even studies, she goes to snow school where she has snow studies. She tells her parents about the Yeti outside her window, and they say, that's absurd. Don't be silly. So all night long, in her bedroom with her little brother, they're both asleep, but she dreams about the Yeti. Even when she's awake, she thinks about the Yeti. Tells her teacher. The teacher says, don't be silly. That's absurd. We see a missing persons flyer on his board here, corkboard. And it looks very similar, the drawing of this little girl who's missing. That night, she sneaks out of the house. She's going to find the Yeti. She looks and she looks. Finally, she finds a little cave, and inside is a little girl who looks very much like her. She gives her some bark soup, which she has made. And it turns out that she basically has the same experiences as Lucretia. She says, I used to live in the village, and one day I saw a Yeti outside my window. Somewhat intelligent and largely laconic. Her parents said there's no such thing, so she went out to find out for herself. She still hasn't found the Yeti, but she does say, hey, do you want to go out with me? I got to get some more bark for tomorrow's batch of soup. So they head out together. Oh man, these colors, it's amazing. This is a kind of fun seeing Richard Sala draw in this like almost kid's book style. It looks great. I like his, normal style more, but it really suits the story too. And so basically they get separated. Lucretia goes around collecting bark. Before long, she's completely covered in snow. It kind of makes her look bigger and a little bit shaggy, very much like a Yeti. She has marshmallows in her pockets that the girl gave her, and she's eating them because she's hungry. And then she finally sees a house in the distance, a small cabin. She knocked on the door. Turns out it's her parents' house. She tried to open the window, but her mittens and all the snow on them, she couldn't do the latch. She tried to call out, but the marshmallows were all sticky in her mouth. So all that came out of her mouth was a hoarse whisper. And the whole time her little brother is seeing this, and he's yelling to his parents saying, there's a Yeti here. And they're like, nonsense. Finally, Lucretia realizes she's got to keep moving or she'll freeze to death, so she just turns around and leaves. She just says, they're not going to let me in. So she does find a cave. It doesn't say the same cave, it just says a cave. She didn't know how to make bark soup, so she just made up the recipe herself. And she goes to sleep. And so basically, she has become that little girl in the cave. I don't know where that little girl's gone to. Maybe we'll never see her again. It's a very weird, interesting tale. It's almost like a Paul Auster short story. Just this weird, fluid identity thing going on. Like, it's really kind of interesting and bizarre. And I love this last panel where it looks like her little brother is now walking off. The cycle will all begin again. He's going to search for the Yeti now. Next, we have children's authors J. Otto Seibold and Vivian Walsh. We see these two penguins in the North Pole. One's called Chongo Chinga, and one's called Martini. And they find these two giant bags of gold. They make a plan to go on a long walk and see the world. And the longest street they know is Sepulveda Boulevard, which apparently, a lot of people don't know this, it goes from Hollywood, California, all the way to Antarctica. So they decide to set out on a journey, but they make a little pact. They say, I really can't stand it when we fight and yell at each other, and I don't want that to happen. Let's make a deal that the first penguin who gets cross at the other one and raises his voice forfeits their gold. So we'll have an incentive not to fight. They begin their journey. The first night they build an igloo. A fox shows up and is just kind of hovering around watching them. So they make a deal. One of the penguins makes the igloo. The other penguin goes off to get some fish. Now the penguin left behind to make the igloo is starving. He's like, where's that guy? Finally he comes back, way late. He brings him a frozen fish and a block of ice, and the fox comes out of nowhere and eats the fish. So Chongo is very pissed off, but he holds his tongue. He doesn't want to lose the gold. And the next day, it's reversed. They make it to Hollywood. I guess it was just a day's journey. One of them is supposed to secure the hotel, and I believe Chongo is supposed to get food. That fox is still around. He's on the balcony across the way. Now, Martini, who's left behind in the hotel, he's angry. He's like, I'm starving. Where the hell is he? Turns out Chongo got distracted and was swimming in the pool. So Martini's angry as hell. He cannonballs into the pool and he starts yelling at him. So he loses the bet. While they were arguing, though, the fox takes all their gold, and the two penguins just sadly walk back to Antarctica, even though they lived happily ever after. This guy's definitely got a fun, interesting style. Very graphic designy. It didn't really tell me the breakdown, but I'm pretty sure it's Seibold as the art, and Vivian Walsh either co-wrote it or wrote it. Oh, this is great. They got Tony Millionaire. And this is one of those little activity pages for kids. This comic strip is out of order. Can you put it in order? And it's just a little silent comic. This is great. I love this style. Never seen Tony Millionaire draw like this. Once again, beautiful colors. It's kind of watercolors. Now we have William Joyce. I believe he was in the last issue or the first one. One of them. And, of course, the same title. William Joyce is a very popular children's illustrator. Once again, showing off this amazing retro style. He's even really leaning into it with this logo. Look, it says, Wake Up Kids Comic Supplement. Even has a date of 1909. This amazing retro logo. So this is about Art Eamsworth, a boy crime fighter. Basically an all-around whiz kid. And this is about his attempts to isolate giggle ilium. It's the silly atom. So basically he's got to cause this guy a Elihu root to slip on a banana peel. So they're waiting. Look at this amazing art. This is such good stuff. So this guy Root slips on the banana peel, lands on a whoopee cushion, and I guess the energy of this silliness, they've got a little cord, and it goes into this Gigalilium collector. We also meet his best friend Spalding Littlefeet and his little sister. With a very crazy haircut. So the plan works. The guy falls in the banana peel. They collect the Giggle-ilium. Yes, that's right. And then they get a call. They're like, somebody has stolen all of the tulips in Holland. a bunch of sword-wielding ne'er-do-well florists. So they go to we see Holland now. We see these evil florists. We will cut all the tulips, then arrange them tastefully, or die trying. It's funny. Look at this shit, guys. This is almost like just the kinder kids or something. It's so amazing. Even the colors are muted as if it's an old faded newspaper comic page. Quite amazing. So the kids fly to Holland. They attack the florists. Or the Mamelukes, they're called for some reason. The Mamelukes. Our hero zaps these guys with the silly ray. And instead of fighting, they start doing all these silly things. And so basically the war is over. The silly ray saves the day. The King of Holland gives them a medal. And then they fly off. I wish there was 100 of these stories. This story is so fun and imaginative and just nutty. And the way it's drawn is amazing. So now we have Neil Gaiman writes this next story of Sandman fame. And Gan Wilson illustrates it. Quite a combo here. So once again, Neil Gaiman kind of undermines the first panel. He's like, no, not yet. It's not dark and silly yet. It was still the afternoon when the story starts. So these a brother and sister here, they're trying to get their parents to let them have a party at their house. They call up their friends, and none of the friends' parents will let them have a party. I guess after the last party, they had a bad Jell-O incident. They were having Jell-O fights. Then they walk past the graveyard and they realize this would be the perfect place to have a party. We can be as loud as we want and nobody will bother us. This Gan Wilson art, I gotta say, is just really nice. You know, it's very stripped down, not a lot of illustrative lines. It looks so good to me, especially with these great colors too. There's no coloring credits, so I'm just assuming each artist colored their own work. But I just think, you know, I've loved Gan Wilson since I was a little kid. And this looks so great to me. I'm glad that in his old age, he was still knocking it out of the park. So now the party begins. All the friends show up. And they're having Jell-O fights again. And then all of a sudden, these dead people show up. These zombies. At first, the kids are terrified. Then they realize these zombies just want to have a good time. And they start partying with them. They teach the kids zombie games. And then all the kids go home, and they all had a great time. So it's a fun story. Okay, that's the guy's name, Jumpin' Jupiter. So this is a reprint of a very early 1940s, maybe even late 1930s story by Basil Wolverton. He did a lot of these silly comics that basically were kids' comics, even though they weren't necessarily marketed as such. I think this is kind of weird. They actually jammed It Was a Dark and Silly Night into the story. I don't know what was originally in this panel, but you can tell the lettering is modern. I know this sounds like I'm being too serious, but I thought that was like, you should do that to Basil Wolverton's artwork. That's sacrilege. I don't know. Maybe there was just nothing there. I don't know. So, of course, it's Basil Wolverton. So there's tons of zany wordplay and goofy little signs in the background. Little pile of domicile. Places, Faces, Cases, and Spaces by Basil Wolverton. This guy doesn't stop. So he's basically like a space hero. He goes around trying to help people in outer space. So he lives on this little planetoid. He hears a distress signal. He follows it. And he ends up on this planet. Look how great this is. This just beautiful, crazy landscape. So he lands on the planet Dweep. A police officer puts him under arrest. He says, I'm taking you to the Royal High Oof himself. Only a creep would live on Dweep. Hills are too steep, and so is the keep. It's almost like he had Tourette's, rhyming Tourette's, Lisa Wolverton. So he goes to see the king, and I guess his crime was that he was dancing and laughing. So apparently there's a law against dancing and laughing in this world. So they condemn him to a 99 years hard labor. So jumping Jupiter, he tickles the king. And he starts laughing. So now, because he laughs, I guess the law's changed. Because if the king can laugh, then anyone can laugh. So he gets rid of this unjust law. But then he changes it. People who don't laugh will get 99 years hard labor. So everyone in his cabinet starts laughing like crazy. And since he saved the day, they give him a big banquet, big celebration, and then he takes off. God, that's fun stuff. I can't believe just how this is one of the first comic books ever, comic book artists out there. This shit's from like the late 30s, early 40s, and it still looks so good. It doesn't look old-timey or, this wouldn't appeal to people now. It's still great. Oh, this is beautiful. They got Juice to Swarte to make a comic. The great Dutch artist. This one's very weird. Doesn't really seem for children. It doesn't very much seem for adults either, who are logical. It's very weird. We see this weird two-headed bird character. This little kid, his mom says, "Don't be late for school and check in on your grandma on the way to school. We worry about her." The grandma's trying to get in her place, and then he comes to help her. The house key, falls into the sewer grating. This guy lifts the heavy sewer grating so the little boy can look for the key, but then he can't. It slips out of his hands, and it crushes the little boy's head. I thought this was really, I'm sure a lot of parents were just like, "Oh shit, I don't want my kids seeing this shit." It looks kind of gruesome. Of course, it's a silly comic, so it's not actually gruesome. But his head pops off. And so the bystander says, "Hey, here's his head. Take it with you to the hospital." Meanwhile, all these calamities start. A car swerves off the road into the water. The person driving the car says, "Help me." The person trying to help him falls in the water. Then a passing ship hauled them out of the sea. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, they fix up the kid. They sew his head back on. But he's got to recuperate for a few months. But he's worried about his grandma. So I guess he goes to see her, and she says, "Oh, my door lock's been broken for years. I just forgot. I've been here the whole time." Because the poor son thought she was outside with all her bags. Very strange story. The two-headed birds show up again. I couldn't make heads or tails of it, but I don't care. It's just Swarte, and it was totally fun to read. It's not boring or anything. It's just very weird. Guys, I have no idea who this guy Carlos 9 is, but this is freaking amazing, this one. Just starting with this amazing logo. So we see this very strangely drawn a mouse named Billy. She's a pretty little mouse, and she's singing. She's on top of this toy elephant with a little drawer in him. And the elephant is thinking to himself how sad he is because he's in love with the mouse, but he'll always be scared of her because he's an elephant. And Billy will always hate him because he's only a toy. So he couldn't stop crying. His tears filled up the drawer, and Billy falls into this little pond of tears. Now we pull back. Look at this amazing art here. This is so good. And Almost reminds me of that Bill Plimpton, the animator, but more lush. We basically see Albert the rabbit is listening to this absurd story by Elizabeth the Silver Vixen. So she's telling him this story, and now we pull back and we see. I love how these styles are completely polar opposites. I wish I could make these videos without spitting on the comics. When I talk, a little bits of spittle, you probably noticed. I keep doing it. I'm just a gross old man, I guess. So now we get back to the story. Billy's drowning in this little whatever, this pond, and this weird, like, overly intellectual mouse guy with a book. He can't seem to do anything without looking it up under his book. Instead of just swimming to save Billy, he's like, let me look under distress. Now I'll look under swimming. And then these pirates show up. Now we cut back to the storyteller and the listener. Albert is falling asleep, but he really is intrigued by the story. He's just very tired. And also, the vixen, Elizabeth, is thinking, God damn it, he should be asleep by now. She continues with the story. The intellectual mouse saves Billy, gets rid of the pirates. It's a really fun little comic, too. God, the art is so unique. I mean, it's very, like, kind of raw. It's interesting. So then I guess they escape from this tear-filled drawer. The elephant, still crying, says, what can I do? I guess I can wish them happiness. The happiness I'll never have. And now we go back to the storyteller and the listener, Albert and Elizabeth. And he falls asleep. He has a dream where the mouse, that intellectual mouse, is reading him a story. V is for vixen, a lady fox, a carnivorous animal that often eats rabbits for 5 o'clock tea. And when he wakes up, he sees rabbit bones all around. So he hightails it out of there. Such a weird little story. But guys, this art, man, oh God, slays me. Now we have Kaz. I think Kaz is the only guy who's been in all 3 issues, other than Art Spiegelman. This is a great one. It's there's this weird family in the neighborhood called the Boffos, and their house is upside down. Everything in their yard's upside down. Their house is upside down inside. But then their son, one of their sons, his only son, I believe, he doesn't like it. He's living all crazy. Like, the father wears underwear on his head. The grandfather has a boot for a hat. And they make him have a glove for a hat. And he's like, I don't like wearing gloves on my head. He says, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to dress up like a normal kid. And I'm leaving. So he's heading out through the neighborhood. There's a couple come up to him and say, hey, would you sign a petition to have the Boffo family kicked out of the neighborhood? They're an affront to normal people like us. He agrees to sign it. He really is annoyed with his parents. All of a sudden, there's a gas explosion. The whole neighborhood, look at all the houses go in the air. And when he runs back to his house, this little kid, now his house is the only one that's right side up, and all the other houses have been blown onto their roofs. They're upside down. And the parents have somehow turned normal. They're just wearing normal clothes. The explosion somehow made them normal, turned them into pinks. So it turns out, they say, we have something to admit to you, son. You're adopted from a dog kennel. You were actually a puppy, and we raised you as our little boy. The boy's thrilled. He's like, I knew I was right. I always knew I was adopted. And then as they leave, the grandfather whispers to the father, he says, when do you think we should tell him that we're really cats? That's such a good, fun story. I think this was my favorite one of the issue. Man, Kaz is really good at kids' comics. He should do more. Next, we have Barbara McClintock again, the great children's book author. And this is one of those activity pages, like, can you find the differences in these two drawings? God, her artwork's amazing. Look at that. It's just so classic. It looks like 1910 or something. This would be art illustrating The Wind in the Willows or something, or some great children's book. Beautiful stuff. Very cute little bears she draws. This is nice. Patrick McDonnell of Mutt's fame. And I really like this just totally loose, sketchy style. It really reminds me of the underground cartoonist Dan O'Neill a lot, where it's very sketchy and loose, but underneath you can see that this guy's a master cartoonist, Patrick McDonnell. You know, he's got his shit down. So even when he draws loose like this, it still looks good. This is just a very silly piece where one night the moon won't come out. He's hiding. Of course, everyone's wigging out. The dogs are like, I can't howl at the moon. The frogs are like, I can't croak. And this owl is saying, who will I hoo to? I can't hoo to anyone. So it turns out the moon's afraid of the dark. And the owl corrects him and says, but you're the light, dummy. Come on out. And he finally does. And it's a happy ending. Very silly. And then we have another fun page here. This is Arsicoyak, and it has a blank. So I don't know if that's just part of the shtick, because this is almost like a Mad Libs. If you guys remember those when you were kids, well, if you're old, make your own dark and silly tale. So a lot of the words are blank here, nouns, adjectives, verbs, and then you have to fill them in and make your own story. I love this art. I think this is the first time I've ever seen Arsicoyak draw in maybe his own style. Maybe this is aping someone, I don't know. But, you know, Arsicoyak has made his whole career of making comics that, mimic someone's art style. But this is very appealing, clean style he's got going on. And just really fun to look at. As this father's telling his daughter a little story, the camera pulls back. We see this amazingly interesting neighborhood. Supergirl's flying around. There's a locomotive in the middle of the street. Then it pulls back even further. We leave Earth, go to this other weird planet, zoom in on that planet, and now it's some alien person telling their children the end of the story. So it's educational, too, because it teaches kids what verbs and adjectives are. Here's the answers to some of the activity pages. And I was really sad that this one doesn't have the contributors' notes, because I really wanted to find out about that Carlos 9 guy. If any of you guys know about him, please write in the comments below. I mean, I'm going to look him up on the internet, but sometimes you can't find stuff on the internet, even though it supposedly has everything. Sometimes I have a hard time finding things. So now I love this. The end papers are, it was a bright and silly morning. So we see the next morning. It seems like all the monsters have befriended the humans and vice versa. And everyone's happy to be hanging out with these monsters. This lady who the night before was running from this guy, she's dancing with him now. Waldo's still hanging around. And if you notice the color palettes, it totally looks like daylight now. And everything's happy and full of sunshine. Really fun end papers. I imagine if I was a little kid, I would have looked at this book over and over. I would have stared at this book for hours every day. Never gotten tired of it. Here's the back cover. Another well-designed thing. And Spiegelman and Moody, they know their business. And that's it for Little Lit. It was a dark and silly night. And unfortunately, that's it for Little Lit. There was a compilation. I almost want to get it just because I think it has a new cover. And maybe it even has a new story or two. I don't know. But I really love these. I wish there was more of them. Such a great idea. So well done. But I hope you guys enjoyed looking at these with me. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.